Good evening, y'all. I'm exhausted. Back to my little two-a-days thing, getting ready for the summertime, as it were. But I hope everybody's doing well. And it came to my attention that there's like a threshold in this whole manosphere aspect, like, levels to it. And there's like a newer tier of people that want to identify with kind of the opportunities they've had and sharing wisdom, so the more teaching element, and then there's the more entertainment based, it's almost like a damn sitcom at this point. But what I've noticed is that a lot of guys, particularly younger dudes who have been programmed with this type of stuff, they've set this intention up in their head that they can't leave their, significant other. They can't leave their woman. And I've deduced like three primary reasons, because in fact and in theory, everybody's situation is different, so you have to give people that, not grace, but window, you know what I'm saying, to look through. At the same time, though, it usually vibrates around three different realms, right? And it's going to be real short. It's not really a deep dive into anything, but just based on people in my family that I've seen, friends, of course, co-workers in some certain instances, myself at one point in my life, it's not really fear. It's all about retraining your mentality, and this is all an internal, I'd say atonement or reclamation. It's not really a pursuit. It's more of a reclaiming of who you are, becoming who we've always been, as I've always frequented in my mind. So the first one is just lack of optionality. A lot of guys, and that kind of jungle vines its way into different threads. For example, you get the best mouth hugs in the world from your girl, right? I mean, it just turns your whole day around. It makes you just absolutely exhilarated beyond measure. So if you were to leave her, you think that quality or that stimulation is not going to be possible anywhere else. So as a result, you stay, right? But the origin point of that was lack of options, okay? A more practical example would be, doesn't always have to be physical, i.e. sexual. Sometimes it could just be like, I've seen dudes, like a girl, she's taking very good care of her, like, skincare regimen, right? So as a result, her skin was not only very radiant, but it was, came with a very pleasant hit to the olfactory system. Smell. Had a real, like, intoxicating, damn near, like, perfumes that, were not very common, right? And this dude would rave on and on about, he'd get like 2 beers, and you know how it is. There's always that very talkative one of the group, and he started talking about how his girl smelled, and he wasn't being, well, obviously that's kind of strange if you continue to talk about it, but he would always say, like, yeah, man, and it's almost like before I even hit the door, so that's another hint, they live together. So he was more or less entranced in that world, but that stimulation allowed him to sacrifice his view of more, because he actually expressed often not being happy, but those were, this whole, she constantly smelled excellent, which is a fantastic quality, because the way he described it, it was beyond hygiene, because she was obviously clean, but as far as the whole just dynamic of being in the presence of that, to him that was important, you know what I'm saying? but at the same time, he wasn't very happy. So that was kind of strange too. So the first realm is kind of just lack of options that guys feel. And like I said in another video, I think it was Sincere Query for Gen Z, guys that have been rewired, like they're in the midst of a world that's trying to rewire all of us. The tricky part is based on how your perception of the opposite sex was formed. We'll say formative years. So to put it to a number scale, I say age 5 through like 17. Based on how those years went, as far as just structure in society, you know, you can either kind of like put your head down and change because you don't know what's coming next. I'm not saying that's all of y'all. Or you can kind of just get that nostalgic look on your face and be like, damn, I remember when you could just understand all these familiar conversations we continue to have. So, realm number 2 is simply just going to be more of a not reading the signs, or not your lens for the, I'm trying to word this a particular way. The way in which you understand women is lacking. So in this formula, that means certain signs that you should catch, you let them go. And interestingly enough, that peels back to point number 1. You know, when you're clinging on to that rock, when your fingers all fucked up, and the wind blowing, and all, you know, the ocean's howling at you, and you're just holding on, because you think, you know, this is all you got. So that's the origin point. But this fear of not understanding, more so when she may be mad, when the sentences become shorter and the conversations lose their vitality, you will trick yourself or just simply be that green or naive to not understand that, you know, the current of the relationship has changed. There's not much science to that one, again, because it applies to your individual dynamic. So let's say guys put up with so much on so many different levels now that every example is almost like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. You know, guys who, you know, dread going to the grocery store because they feel if they forget something, it's going to cascade into another series of arguments, which is going to bring up something that they didn't secure or nip in the bud last time. And, you know, it builds all of these weird ass abnormal roadblocks in y'all's communication, you know. And what's even more sinister is that she generally knows this, but what you have to, when you do all the final mathematics of the situation, you can't just keep painting the, you know, horns of evil on your partner or your, you know what I mean, your situation like that when you didn't realize that the tension was mounting anyway. You know what I mean? So, and again, that's more of a, you have to have experience. You know what I mean? If you've never caught a touchdown in a game, or you've never, you know, hit a big shot in a game and felt the accompanying energy of that moment, you may not know how to handle it. And that's all this comes down to, right? So options, either dull perception, you know, you might be in a dry spell, you might have, you know, fallen off by, you know, heartbreak or unfortunate circumstance. If that happened to you, you know, my heart goes out to you for real. I mean that. So lack of options and dull perception or very amateur perception, okay? And the third would just be you're manipulating her. And this is weird because it's very easy for, you know how they say like nice guys aren't really nice? This is kind of the special features of that principle. The nice dude who isn't really nice, which is very true by the way, he still has desires. And I'm not talking about in a physical sense. He still has a vision for his life. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, as small or large as it may be. And that's expected. What complicates things is he tends to unknowingly give every situation in his life the benefit of the doubt, right? So, if I'm guitar one in a band, right, a new band, let's say, and me and my girl live together, and she comes to me and says, you know, I don't think you should play in that band because I don't really like the genre, and Jason, your drum player or whatnot, he's kind of he's shady. It's just something about him. And also that girl who's on bass, I don't like the way she looks at you. Some things might blossom there. So yeah, give or take, babe. I'm not really into that. Now let's say we have two candidates. Candidate number one says, all right, dear, well, what do I need to do in order to make you happy? Because ultimately that's all this relationship is for. And she's, continues to just string you along like the German Shepherd that you've shown yourself to be in that particular pattern. Candidate number two, I don't even need to go into that because it would just be a totally different conversation, or lack thereof, or some type of distinct cut in the script where a boundary would be either reinforced or set. And the reason I say this, or this particular example, is because this happened to a friend of mine, and so he didn't want to. He had never put his foot down, for lack of a better word. So he gracefully suppressed what he wanted for his life. Okay? So, real quick recap. Lack of options, first and foremost. And then that would feed a dulled perception of the opposite sex. And then, most importantly, like we just discussed, would be not being able to escape the nice guy role. These are the three main reasons why guys can't really, leave a situation that's bad for them, right? Some men, just by nature of whether it's genetics or life experience or destiny, whatever you want to call it, have this notion of, even if something is going well, they'll still depart, they'll still leave, they'll still do what they're going to do. That's not for me to judge. Some people would disagree with that lifestyle just based on a whole bunch of different factors, but that's not what I'm talking about per se. But that third one that we just discussed is just so powerful because particularly men in their approaching the middle age, maybe early 30s, even if you matured in your 20s and you're entering that kind of, I've heard a wise man once call it no man's land when it comes to just the vision for your life. You have a rough draft, maybe 2 or 3 rough drafts of how your life is going to go, but ultimately great triumphs and great losses, keeping it real, await you. And that's okay. those are the tests. But you know, there's a reason why a lot of dudes are just snapping. A lot of dudes who are so, and nice is a very vague word. I mean, anything under that enclave, so polite, sweet, accommodating, thoughtful. See, and this is where people get finessed, because it doesn't mean exclude compassion, valor, loyalty, uprightness, good conduct, all this stuff. Even if it's corny, these virtuous qualities that describe you as a man. Because we're so polarized, especially in our, American brains, if that's where you're from. If not, just the whole Western brain is from a very early age, this or that, red or blue, burger or hot dog, sky or ocean, bird or like everything is this or that, this or that. You know what I'm saying? So, but you really don't have to be the most important, and this is what I'm going to end with. The most important aspect I've noticed is the nicer you are to yourself. You guys know all the pillars and the categories. The nicer you are to yourself, the more you will invite self-respect. Okay? And the more you respect yourself, you'll embrace the fruitful side of being selfish. Because selfish gets such a, villain of a role when it comes to just connotation and word perception. But you get the bountiful, abundant, I care about me, therefore I think this way, therefore I act this way, therefore this is who I am. You understand? It's like selfish that took the right path. You know what I mean? And that is, the selfish man and the nice guy are really arch enemies, because they inhabit the same space. It's just one knows how to subdue their morality and make themselves stronger for the future, for campaigns, for building, for missions, for conquest. All the great virtues that spring from man's journey, his core competency of who he is. And that will surely eliminate any type of anxiety or fear you have about abandoning a situation that may not be fruitful for you.